Are you an expert in a particular field looking to create impact? Do you have an innovative idea or project you are implementing? Would you like to meet other like-minded experts? Then look no further. Introducing the PRS Thought Leadership Program. The Thought Leadership Program is a platform to share your expertise and explore authentic ideas with like-minded peers. The Thought Leadership Program brings together innovative, passionate, and courageous experts to find solutions to the day-to-day challenges that Zambia and Africa is facing. The Thought Leadership Program brings to you thought leaders that will discuss impactful, innovative ideas to move Zambia forward. Tune in every Wednesday from 9 hours to 10 hours on Money FM 93.7. If you would like to be part of the program, be sure to check out the website at prs.org.zm. We are also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X, formerly Twitter, at PRS365. PRS365, helping organizations find answers, solve problems, and create impact.
Good morning, listeners, and welcome to the Thought Leadership Program. My name is Fredrick Musonda. I'm your host. Our guest speaker for today is Stanley Mwango. Carbon markets are rapidly emerging as a cornerstone of Zambia's response to climate change and sustainable development, far beyond technical jargon, that is. These markets represent new streams of investment, innovation, and an opportunity for communities, entrepreneurs, as well as the nation as a whole. And as Zambia navigates these complexities, especially those of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and forges bilateral agreements with global partners, the landscape is shifting, creating both regulatory pathways and voluntary market options. So today, understanding and engaging with carbon markets is not just an environmental imperative, but a strategic economic opportunity for Zambia's future. If you've just tuned in, this is the Thought Leadership Program, in short, TLP, brought to you by PRS 365 Limited. PRS is a management consultancy firm that offers three main services, that is research, project management, and innovations testing. At PRS, we are practical problem solvers that help organizations to find solutions, create impact that has shared value. This thought leadership program, called the PRS Elevate Impact Program, brings together innovative experts with a passion to solve the day-to-day challenges that Zambia and Africa are facing. So today, as I mentioned, we are hosting Stanley Mwango on PRS Elevate Impact. We will be unpacking Zambia's evolving carbon market landscape. So Stanley, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Fred, and thank you very much for having me, and good morning to the listeners.
So before we dive into our discussion, could you just tell us a bit about yourself and the work you do as a climate sustainability and carbon markets community engagement specialist?
Wow, that's a big one. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, my name is Stanley Mwango. I work for a vertically integrated organization called Export Trading Group under Climate Solutions, with my role basically leading the design and implementation of holistic community engagement programs.
Okay.
So what we do is we collaborate with community members just to sensitize them on the importance of carbon abatement activities that ETG Climate Solutions has been implementing. But at the same time, I help secure partnerships with local organizations and government to enhance project impact and sustainability.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. Sounds like an engaging job.
Yeah, quite engaging. It's full-time dedication for community service.
Wow. So I think the question that is running in our minds at the moment is, what exactly are carbon markets? I mean, we hear people saying carbon markets, green finance, but what exactly are carbon markets?
What exactly are carbon markets? Wow, that's a good one. Well, I'll respond by also asking you questions so that we can all move at the same pace.
Okay.
I think we must agree that companies are driven by money, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so putting a price on carbon emissions should encourage businesses to stop polluting, right? Absolutely. So that is what carbon markets were exactly designed to do. So they basically help reduce emissions by charging polluters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'll give an example, maybe just to give a bit of a background on how this came into being. I think it was established in the 1990s.
Okay.
I think it originates from the United States of America, where there was this company that was polluting quite a lot in terms of emission of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. So after a period of time, they started experiencing acid rains. They started experiencing acid rains, and then the American government quickly had to sit down and say, how can we resolve this, because it's causing some serious environmental impact and effects to the environment, rather. Yeah, so seeing to that, the government had to pass a law to force those polluters to pay for their emissions, and they call this system a cap and trade, and that is what saw to the reduction of acid rains in that particular region or regions of America itself. They saw that after 8 years after passing that cap, they noticed to say there was some sort of a fall in terms of the pollution levels by 20%, and that is how a new way of cutting emissions was born, by putting a kind of a cap. So that is the history behind it. But then, interestingly, in 1997, the International Climate Change Treaty, known as the Kyoto Protocol, suggested applying a concept of cap and trade to carbon as well. And that's how countries and regions set up their own carbon markets using the cap and trade. And of course, the government is the one that sets up the cap on the amount of carbon that can be emitted by an industry, and splits those caps into permits, and either gives or sells these permits to firms. So if you see, if a company doesn't use up all its allowance, it can sell what it doesn't need to another firm, and if it needs more permits, it can buy them from those that have spares. And so you find that each year the cap gets stricter and stricter, and because of the shrinking pool of the permits, it gets even more expensive. And basically that's what carbon markets are for, basically for set up to decarbonize the world.
Wow, decarbonizing indeed.
Yeah.
That's an interesting word. So having, of course, given us a brief sort of history of where carbon markets came about, and making us understand what carbon markets are exactly, can you just briefly explain to us what is meant by Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and also just how that shapes Zambia's approach to carbon markets?
Wow, okay, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. So I think when it comes to Article 6, Article 6 is just part of the Paris Agreement. And the Paris Agreement is a historic global commitment where countries have agreed to work together to limit global warming to at least 1.5 degrees centigrade. So you find that Article 6 focuses on collaboration to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Otherwise, we know them as the GHGs, famously known as the GHGs. So it outlines how we trade emissions reductions to mitigate and remove greenhouse gases from our atmosphere as efficiently as possible, and in order to combat the effects of climate change. So maybe we may want to talk about carbon trading in forms of units of emissions reduction, which are also known as carbon credit, like you mentioned. You mentioned. So it's basically a market-based approach that are designed to incentivize emissions reduction and promote sustainable development. So Article 6 basically uses two market-based approaches, which is Article 6.2 and Article 6.4. So you find that Article 6.2 focuses about collaboration, where it allows countries to voluntarily trade mitigation outcomes, which are carbon credit authorized by a country to show it's basically, or actually reduced its emissions. So countries that successfully reduce their emissions can sell their extra carbon credits to countries that need them. And of course, countries that buy these credits, they can use them to meet their own emission reduction goals. And this is because carbon credits might be cheaper in another country and expensive in another country. So because of this cap and trade kind of arrangement, you find that maybe due to some strict rules in certain countries, you find maybe Zambia may be very attractive for certain companies to come and set up those big industries, because maybe of our not being so harsh in terms of the carbon laws and stuff. But then we are waking up and we are seeing things coming in. We are developing different frameworks, and putting different caps and charges so that we can also see how we can combat climate change. But then we also have the Article 6.4 of the Paris Agreement, which just basically talks about the crediting mechanism. This one is just basically about the generation of carbon credits by supporting activities that fight climate change.
I see.
So you see, it allows individuals or companies to compensate for their own emissions by buying carbon credits. So these credits show that they help reduce emissions somewhere else. So I think in summary, I would say Article 6 basically helps us solve those climate problems. And it basically creates that clear pathway for governments, private sectors, and of course for them to work together to encourage them to reduce emission. And if we have to develop, of course, we have to develop sustainably. And Article 6 pushes us to do more in terms of fighting climate change.
Wow, that's great. That's great, especially in the sense that where like it incentivizes actually the fight, like to decarbonize, reduce carbon, or other greenhouse gases and all that.
Absolutely.
So it's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you for explaining to us what carbon markets are, as well as just like shedding some light on Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and how it's paving way for opportunities in Zambia, especially given that Zambia, as it stands, is one of those markets that are really attractive for carbon trading. So we're going to take a short break. Please stay tuned.
Do you desire for fresh perspectives? Are you ready to be a leader who shapes the future, not just reacts to it? Then buckle up, because the Thought Leadership Program is here. This dynamic program is the ultimate convergence point for industry experts, visionaries, and trailblazers. Each week, we bring you the thought leaders who are pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. You will hear cut-edging insights, groundbreaking ideas, and practical strategies that will propel you forward. The Thought Leadership Program is where the future takes shape. Let the power of ideas propel you forward. Welcome to a space where thoughts lead, leaders inspire. The Thought Leadership Program, TLP, aims to amplify voices of thought leaders to drive positive change across business, government, and development sectors. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to learn from the best and become a leader who makes a difference. Tune in to the Thought Leadership Program on Money FM 93.7 every Wednesday at 9 hours. Visit our website at prs.org.zm for more information and subscribe to our podcast. Be the leader, be the future, be part of the program. This is PRS and Money FM, reminding you to think outside the box.
Great. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you are listening to the Thought Leadership Program, TLP, brought to you by PRS 365 Limited. Our speaker for today is Stanley Mwango. The topic under discussion is Unpacking Zambia's Evolving Carbon Market Landscape. So earlier, Stanley just helped us to briefly understand what exactly carbon markets are and explained a bit about Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and also just helping us understand how that influences Zambia's carbon market landscape. So, Stanley, of course you've explained all these things. Now, of course you touched on different parts of Article 6. What then is the difference between the Article 6 way, which is often called the compliance markets way, and the voluntary carbon market?
Well, the key difference between voluntary carbon markets, or VCMs as we call them, and Article 6 of the Paris Agreement basically lies in their purpose and scope mostly. Okay. So you will see that voluntary carbon markets are basically voluntary, and these are decentralized markets where companies and individuals buy carbon credits to offset their emissions. Well, on the other hand, Article 6 establishes a framework for governments to cooperate and trade carbon credits to meet their nationally determined contributions, the NDCs as we call them. And that's why you see that if you look at our pledge, even as a country, as Zambia, where we've pledged to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2030, that was we're talking about 20,000 gigatons of carbon by 2030. So you find that it's an Article 6 path that our country has taken, and that's why you've seen us trying to come up with different bilateral agreements with countries that are also willing and want to offset and buy off those carbon trade, because of the pathway that Article 6 has basically created. So for me, that is the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it makes sense.
No, it does indeed. Looking at this target, 25% by 2030, do you feel it's a very ambitious target, or we are on the way to achieving that? Looking at, we are now in 2025?
Oh yeah, I think to be honest, we've seen different types of initiatives coming up, and then one thing that we love is the fact that there's that goodwill and government will in terms of trying to fight even our position as a country.
Oh, yes.
I think we've made our commitments clear, and even the setting up of these contributions, which are actually reviewed after a couple of years or so. You see how we take center stage and participate in almost the Conference of Party, where we talk about the one that is sponsored by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So you see that Zambia has demonstrated that, and we've seen sustainable management of forest practices being encouraged here and there. So yeah, but there's still a lot to do if you ask me. And if we have to meet this target, I mean, we all have to come to the party, because if we have to get to net zero, because if you look at it from of course, the carbon markets are providing that kind of motivation for companies to do this, or people to venture into this space.
Yes.
But then you are seeing that there is more pollution being done, and then to me, I'll give an example. Even the industries or technologies that we are inviting in terms of the investments and bringing about development, it should be something that promotes sustainability and something that is carbon neutral. Because you're not going to put up a plant that is going to, or an industry that is going to be producing a lot of fossil fuels and stuff. I think that is contrary to the opposite of what we're trying to see. So we are seeing a situation where we should walk the talk. I think even it has to start even from I don't want to go into politics, but even from the leadership of the day, to ensure that even the investors that we bring into our country, at least they should bring about industries that are climate friendly and of course good for environment and Zambia.
Interesting.
But we are getting there slowly. Maybe just to add on that, I think you've seen different types of companies or projects trying to venture into the carbon space, trying to tap into these opportunities by trying to come up with different programs that can help in terms of fighting climate change, and of course different mitigation interventions coming into being. I spoke about, if I didn't, the farmer carbon abatement programs. I think these are something that we never thought about. But you see, we have a situation where farmers are not only able to just grow their crops, but then they can take advantage of the carbon space that is available by tapping into carbon abatement programs that speak directly in addressing or mitigating climate change issues. And then they have to get incentivized for that. So it's a win-win.
It's a win-win, yeah.
For us, whilst we also try to address the sustainable development goals, it basically has to be in alignment with our sustainable development goals that we're trying to focus on. So we find that we score on the climate action, we also score on the other side where we want to fight poverty and hunger, and see that we can attain those sustainable development goals.
Yeah, and that's the good way to go. And of course, we have seen that there's this opportunity. In your view, like, who do you think are the main players and funders in each market? Of course, like by region or anything, who are the main, what are they called, off-takers that are engaged in these opportunities? Like, who can Zambian entrepreneurs, NGOs, or companies approach if they wanted to participate in these markets?
Well, I'll speak for That's a very good one. That's a tricky one. Yeah, but then when you look at the voluntary carbon markets, it's voluntary. So you see, a company may have their own maybe sustainable development goals that they may want to maybe do emissions reduction, and then eventually maybe even start up a carbon project where they want to tap into that opportunity and sell, because it's voluntary. So you may want to look for companies that may want to trade or offset, depending on the mitigation outcomes that you're trying to address or achieve. But then, so for the voluntary, it's basically voluntary. It's very difficult. I'm being very strategic by not mentioning the names, because it's highly competitive out there.
Exactly.
So you may just mention somebody, and then everybody else goes to that person and all those things. But then it's very easy for me to talk about the Article 6 path, because we know to say recently Zambia has signed bilateral agreements with countries following the Article 6 path. But there is opportunity to sign up with there's Singapore, there's Germany, there's Norway, there's Sweden, there's Switzerland. All these countries have shown interest in trying to invest in Zambia by trying to buy off carbon offsets from different organizations that may want to venture into the carbon space. So there is all these opportunities. So I just gave it out.
I hear you. Wow, that's great. So having, of course, had that information, we can take another break. Then when we come back, we'll jump right into continue unpacking what Zambia's evolving carbon market landscape has to offer with Stanley Mwango, of course.
Great.
Do you desire for fresh perspectives? Are you ready to be a leader who shapes the future, not just reacts to it? Then buckle up, because the Thought Leadership Program is here. This dynamic program is the ultimate convergence point for industry experts, visionaries, and trailblazers. Each week, we bring you the thought leaders who are pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. You will hear cut-edging insights, groundbreaking ideas, and practical strategies that will propel you forward. The Thought Leadership Program is where the future takes shape. Let the power of ideas propel you forward. Welcome to a space where thoughts lead, leaders inspire. The Thought Leadership Program, TLP, aims to amplify voices of thought leaders to drive positive change across business, government, and development sectors. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to learn from the best and become a leader who makes a difference. Tune in to the Thought Leadership Program on Money FM 93.7 every Wednesday at 9 hours. Visit our website at prs.org.zm for more information and subscribe to our podcast. Be the leader, be the future, be part of the program. This is PRS and Money FM, reminding you to think outside the box.
Well, welcome back. If you just joined us, you are listening to the PRS Thought Leadership Program, brought to you by PRS 365. Our speaker for today is Stanley Mwango, and the topic is Unpacking Zambia's Evolving Carbon Market Landscape. We have discussed the differences between voluntary and compliance carbon markets, and how Zambian organizations can make the most of these available opportunities. So, Stanley, how can individuals or organizations navigate registration or just compliance challenges, and also how can they go about choosing between voluntary and the Article 6 pathways?
Wow, that's an interesting one. Well, I think it's about, when you talk about registration and compliance, for voluntary carbon markets, I think registration in this landscape often involves selecting a reputable standard or methodology, and you'll probably be required to undergo validation and verification. That's a process that is going to help you ensure that you demonstrate quality and integrity of the carbon credits that you're trying to generate. So from the voluntary carbon market, where of course you you have to find a methodology that you may want to use and implement and use. But then because you're going to go under some serious and vigorous kind of verification and validation by an independent auditor that is supposed to come and speak on your behalf to say, indeed, there is carbon emissions reduction here being done by so on and so forth. So it's not an easy one because it's an expensive undertaking. It's like you're inviting somebody to say, look, I'm open and I'm doing the right stuff. Can you come and check if I'm in compliance to the highest standards as possible. So I think that is where most of them, especially those that mean well, I mean, they don't shy away because they know to say they're doing the right thing. But those that go in with ill motives, maybe just there to, I don't want to use scam people or something, or those that don't mean well, they're going in for other purposes. Those are the ones that may want to shy away because then they would want to do some shortcuts and here. But then it's about quality and, of course, the integrity of the carbon credits that are being generated. So, on the other hand, the Article 6 path, it's basically compliance under Article 6, which requires adhering to national policies and international reporting requirements, as well as basically including those that are related to transparency framework and tracking of these carbon credits themselves. So you find that in as much as people may be interested to get into the landscape, but they may not have sufficient information in terms of how to go about them, in terms of the regulatory frameworks that are supposed to be used or followed, or those that govern getting into such kind of space. And that is where we've been lacking for most people. And I think it's programs like this that I hope now to open up and unpack, unlock people's bottlenecks to say, oh yeah, so this is how you go about this, or this is what this means, and stuff like that. So slowly we are getting there, and that is what has seen us establishing on Zambian carbon market framework, regulatory framework that guides in terms of how you can go about setting up. I think every step is there in terms of how you can go about, and I'm happy to see that we've really made headways in that, because it was recently launched, though it hasn't been operationalized yet. So they're still trying to come up with an SI that is going to be able to help to operationalize it and make it some sort of a law, so that every other company or individual that would want to get into the carbon space, they may follow those principles and guidelines and have, of course, this opportunity to tap into the carbon market.
Okay, interesting. I'm very much interested, hearing about the independent auditor and how it is that they are strict when it comes to the quality and integrity of the undertakings. I believe that's a good one, because at least then you are sure to say whichever players are on the market, they are going there fully vetted, and the outcome will be the best one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what we call the VCM, the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets, which is quite strictly. So, then we may have different types of projects and maybe companies or individuals that may want to demonstrate emissions reduction. But what is key is we wouldn't want to have mitigation interventions that are being done by one person to be claimed that they've also done the same by another person. Basically, I'm talking about double counting. So just to avoid double counting, where we would want, if indeed emissions reduction has taken place, there shouldn't be any other person that should come and claim to say, this is my project, I'm also doing this, because they're going to obviously get an incentive for that. So it will be cheating if you come and point at somebody's mitigation interventions and claim them as yours. So I think that has been the challenge mostly in this space, and this is why the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets has become very strict in terms of people adhering to those set protocols and principles, and of course the monitoring, and it's quite tough. So they use a lot of sophisticated technology. They are going to run through some serious scrutiny just for them to be able to validate and verify, to say yes, indeed there is emissions reduction, and then also to demonstrate and prove that indeed the project is additional and and meets those standards.
Wow.
Before they can list you to the registry, where you're able to now, given that certificate, to say now you're clear, you're able to trade and offset your credits.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. So, in the event that someone is like a new entrant in these carbon markets, especially in Zambia, are there like spaces or like where can they access support programs or just resources to make it a bit easier for them to actually be key players on these markets?
Well, for the new entrants, you're really pushing in the corner when it comes to the voluntary carbon market. Well, so for those, it's about like I mentioned, it's really voluntary. You may find that we may want to offset for different kinds of reasons. Maybe I may want to just reduce my carbon footprint as an individual, organization, or maybe it is part of our climate sustainability goal, if you want to reduce emissions or go green, or as we may call it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but then, if you want to get into the carbon market space, of course, you follow these regulatory frameworks, and then you get to take advantage of the expert guidance that is going to help you in terms of how you can go about these things. And so the information is there. But when it comes to those that may really want support, I'm sure by now the government has already demonstrated this by signing off the Paris Agreement and then trying to operationalize Article 6, which I talked about earlier, that is able to create a proper and clear pathway for companies or individuals that would want to trade. So if you take the Article 6 the Zambian carbon space can be accessed by so many. Like we've got the SPAC 6, which is supporting preparation for Article 6 program itself. We've got the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. And of course, initiatives like the Zambia Nature, People and Climate, Investment Plan. I've seen even banks or different types of investments offering that capacity building, basically matchmaking services. And there is so much information on the carbon market framework. So the carbon market framework that has been established has enough and sufficient information for somebody who may want to venture into this space.
Wow.
And of course, tuning into programs like PRIS, where we come to talk about such kind of issues, where you get to find a bunch of experts that are able to understand and able to guide in terms of how you can go about this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there you have it, listeners. There are quite a number of resources that can be accessed, of course. And as we are wrapping up the program, I would just like to hear a bit more from you, Stanley. Could you just mention, I know, of course, you're from mentioning some, but are there any other latest developments or initiatives by the government? And what's next for Zambia generally in the global carbon market landscape, that is?
Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Zambia because I'm not representing Zambia. I'm not representing Zambia. But then I can give a quick comment, maybe just kudos to Zambia and our position basically as a country in terms of how much we've made strides in this. I mean, for me, it's the excitement about the full implementation of the carbon market framework, which has given birth to all these things that we're going to talk about. We're going to see a lot of progress and, of course, a position in terms of different individuals coming into venture into this landscape. So it's a good thing. So the carbon market framework has really opened doors. And also the fact that it's yet to we also yet to do an SI, a statutory instrument, to operationalize it, which I think the government is working tirelessly. I'm aware of that they're trying to see how they can operationalize it as soon as possible. And I'm also excited that I've seen Zambia also demonstrating that by signing bilateral agreements with countries to effect the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. So those are some of the things that we are seeing, initiatives, government coming in. There's the revision of the Forest Act, which is, I think, underway, trying to see how they can incorporate different mitigating initiatives by different players. I think recently we used to focus so much on the forest kind of arrangement, the carbon stock, where we always talking about forest trees and that. But then there are so many ways that people can offset. You can go into the solar space, you can do different projects that get to demonstrate emissions reductions and, of course, climate sustainability. So there is all this. And one thing that I'm happy, really not to speak on behalf of the Ministry of Economy, but I think they're trying, and they're trying to put things in place and establishing all those protocols and guidelines that we can tap into. So, so I think that is where we see ourselves. And then, of course, the opportunity is there. What's next for Zambia on the carbon market? I think we are well positioned. Let's just brace ourselves, because the race to net zero by 2050, I think every project must count, and every mitigation intervention must count. So there is no such thing as us trying to be reluctant and trying to, otherwise we'll all be wiped out. So we need as many projects as possible, and that is why you're seeing government trying to create that pathway and opportunity for people like, or individuals like yourself and myself, to tap into these opportunities and see how we can have some sort of a concerted effort and collective action where we can all fight and help combat climate change. Well, it concerns all of us.
It concerns all of us, indeed. It concerns all of us. So, dear listeners, we have come to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you, Stanley, for joining us today. If you would like to participate, of course, on the PRIS Thought Leadership Program, you can reach us on various platforms. Of course, you can reach us at our office. We are located just along Independence Avenue at Plot 86. But you can also reach us via direct phone call on 0974493357. You can also email us at pris@pris.org.zm, or just visit our website at pris.org.zm. Then we're also available, of course, on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and Facebook as PRS365. Thank you once again, Stanley, for joining us.
Oh, it's an absolute honor, Fred, and thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Pleasure.
Okay. Thank you, listeners.
Do you desire for fresh perspectives? Are you ready to be a leader who shapes the future, not just reacts to it? Then buckle up, because the Thought Leadership Program is here. This dynamic program is the ultimate convergence point for industry experts, visionaries, and trailblazers. Each week, we bring you the thought leaders who are pushing boundaries and redefining what's possible. You will hear cut-edging insights, groundbreaking ideas, and practical strategies that will propel you forward. The Thought Leadership Program is where the future takes shape. Let the power of ideas propel you forward. Welcome to a space where thoughts lead, leaders inspire. The Thought Leadership Program, TLP, aims to amplify voices of thought leaders to drive positive change across business, government, and development sectors. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to learn from the best and become a leader who makes a difference. Tune in to the Thought Leadership Program on Money FM 93.7 every Wednesday at 9 hours. Visit our website at prs.org.zm for more information and subscribe to our podcast. Be the leader, be the future, be part of the program. This is PRS and Money FM. Remind